Governor Andrew Cuomo's attorneys responding to the AG's report on sexual allegations against the governor. Cuomo's legal team raising questions about its fairness.
There is a very serious legal issue about whether the Attorney General's office is correct or not. And that serious legal issue should have gotten more consideration in a report that reaches a conclusion about illegality.
NBC News investigations correspondent Tom Winter joining me now. Tom, Cuomo's attorneys talking legality. They're also taking issue with the fact that they didn't get an advanced copy of the AG's report. Tell us more.
Well, they're not required to. It's as simple as that. According to New York state law, when there's an independent investigation, an independent report that is to be filed, it does not need to be given to anybody in advance. So let's remember, Allison, that this investigation was actually prompted by the governor's senior counsel, Beth Garvey. They called for this. The governor welcomed this investigation. They underwent the investigation. And the statute that gives them the ability to do that requires that a report is made weekly and is shared with not only the attorney general, but also the governor. So in this particular instance, the senior counsel said, wait a minute, the conduct that we're looking into here involves the governor. So we don't need a weekly report on that. That's not what we should be getting. But instead, at the end of this, put out a public report. There's nothing in the law and there's nothing in the letter that says that they want an advance copy and a chance to rebut it. In the meantime, some of the examples brought up by the former U.S. Attorney Paul Fishman, now working on behalf of the governor's office, just don't apply to this particular situation, Allison.
Tom, the governor's attorney is also responding to a criminal complaint from a former executive assistant. What are they saying? What's she alleging?
Right. So the executive assistant came forward after the governor, according to the AG's report, after the governor started making statements, particularly when he said that he had never touched anyone inappropriately. Apparently, that very much upset this executive assistant. It was at that point that she actually broke down in the office, or at least showed some sort of emotion, according to the AG's report, talked to two other executive assistants about what happened, talked to the boyfriend of one of the other executive assistants, who happens to be an FBI employee, about what happened. He counseled her to go to an attorney and engage with that attorney about what happened to her. She's included here in this report. The AG's office denied flat out, but allegations including that he reached inside her shirt and groped her breast in an incident that occurred at the governor's mansion. Now, we have some response now on the record from one of the governor's attorneys. Let's take a listen.
She was at the mansion that day for several hours. She wasn't just working with the governor, she was working with other staffers. Emails that she sent while she was at the mansion reflect that she was joking while she was there. She was eating snacks, and she even offered to stay longer at the mansion when her work was done. Here is the timeline that the investigators don't talk about.
Allison, while we've been speaking here, there is a tweet that has been sent out specific to this issue by a reporter from the Albany Times-Union. They interviewed this executive assistant number one, and the reporter points out that the woman who's involved here says it is not November 16th when this incident occurred. It was around that time, but it was not that day. So even controversy here about who's responding to what and to whom. Yeah. Obviously, this is going to continue to move forward here as this criminal investigation goes forward as well.
So, Tom, I think people have a lot of questions about what all this means for the governor, right? Will he retain his job? Could he potentially face criminal charges? Could he face civil suits? What could this particular criminal complaint mean for the governor?
Well, this criminal complaint for the first time really brings in the possibility of not only the governor being in some legal trouble, as you pointed out, civil or criminal, but actually it's a very specific incident, and it's an incident that could result in the governor potentially being in handcuffs. Now, he's not been charged with any crime, and he, again, as I said before, steadfastly denies that this incident even occurred. But having said that, this is very specific, and as I mentioned, the Attorney General's investigators, one, a noted sexual harassment attorney, somebody who's proficient and an expert in this field, highly regarded, Ann Clark, and then the former acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, June Kim. They found her quite credible. They raised questions about the governor's own responses to her claims in the course of their investigation. So this appears to be quite serious. We talked about earlier in the week this possibility that there could be criminal inquiries and that this was being looked at by 4 or 5 different district attorneys in New York. But this criminal complaint here is very detailed today and presents a real legal jeopardy for the governor if, in fact, through the course of that investigation, they determined that he broke the law, Allison.
Mm-hmm. Tom, as we've been showing in a banner on the screen here, we know that Governor Cuomo has until August 13th, that's next Friday, to turn in evidence before this impeachment investigation from New York lawmakers is wrapped up. Anything you're eyeing between now and then? I realize, obviously, we're getting press updates and things like that at the last minute, but is there anything on the docket right now that we should be aware of before that wraps?
Right. There's no specific date or marker going forward. I suspect that it's going to take at least several days, much more likely several weeks, for this criminal complaint to be looked at and investigated to the point where the district attorney can make decisions on charging. As far as civil complaints, those can be filed at any time, quite literally. In this day and age, people can file lawsuits whenever they can electronically do it. So there's no particular time frame there. Yes, the next step would be that August 13th deadline that's there on the screen.
All right, Tom, I do have a feeling that we'll be talking to you quite a bit next week. In the meantime, have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Allison.